The flight from Denver landed at 4 in the afternoon, and by the time I got my truck from long-term parking and made the drive out to the house, the sun was already dropping behind the foothills. I was tired in a way I hadn't been tired in years. 3 days of sitting and folding chairs at my brother's memorial. 3 days of nephews I barely recognized, telling me how much I looked like him. 3 days of his widow squeezing my hand and asking what I was going to do without him. I didn't have an answer for Herm, 63 years old. My brother was the last person on this earth who knew me from the beginning. I pulled into the driveway around 6. The porch light wasn't on, which was strange because I told my daughter Kira I'd be back that night. Her minivan was parked crooked along the curb, and behind it was a black sedan I didn't recognize. I figured a friend of theirs had come over for dinner. I dragged my suitcase up the walk and let myself in the front door. The smell hit me first. Garlic, onions, something with red wine. My kitchen, but not my kitchen. Voices coming from the dining room. Laughter. A man's voice I didn't know, deep and pleased with itself, saying something about the lighting in the back bedroom. My back bedroom. The room I'd slept in for 31 years. The room my wife Lorna had died in 11 years ago this past March. I set my suitcase down by the coat closet, walked toward the dining room. My daughter Kira was at the table with her husband Brent, and another man, older, maybe my age or a few years younger, with a thick gray beard and a Carhartt jacket draped over the back of his chair. 3 plates, a bottle of wine, candles I didn't own. Kira looked up, and her face did something I'll never forget. It wasn't surprise. It was the look of a kid who's been caught with her hand in a place it shouldn't be, and the look only lasted half a second before she covered it with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Dad, you're back. I told you I'd be back tonight. Right, we thought maybe tomorrow. The bearded man stood up and stuck his hand out. You must be Kira's father. I'm Royston. Brent's dad. I didn't take his hand. I looked at my son-in-law. Brent was sitting there in my chair, the chair at the head of the table, with a napkin tucked into his collar like a child. He didn't stand up. He didn't even put his fork down. Hey, he said, how was the funeral? How was the funeral? How was the funeral? That's what he said, like I'd been to a baseball game. I walked past them, down the hallway, toward my bedroom. I heard Kira say something behind me, low and quick, and I heard Brent answer with something that sounded like, just let him. The door to my bedroom was closed. I tried the handle. It turned, but the door didn't open. Locked. Or stuck. I pushed harder. Something on the other side was blocking it. I went to the garage instead, through the laundry room the way I always do when I come in from the truck. I flipped on the overhead light. And there it was. My dresser, the one Lorna's father built for us as a wedding present, was shoved up against the water heater. The drawers were closed, but I could see they'd been crammed shut. Clothes sticking out at the corners. My nightstand was on top of a stack of plastic storage bins I didn't recognize. My reading lamp, the green glass one, was sitting on the concrete floor with a shade dented in. My closet rod, my actual closet rod, was leaning against the wall with half my shirt still on hangers, the other half spilled onto the floor where someone had dropped them. My wedding picture, the one Lorna and I had taken at Glacier in 1987, was face down on top of the dryer. I picked it up. The glass was cracked across her face. I stood there in the cold garage for I don't know how long. Maybe a minute, maybe 10. I could hear them in the dining room, the laughter starting up again. Careful and quiet at first, and then louder. The bearded man laughing the hardest. I walked back into the dining room. Slowly. I wasn't going to let my legs shake. Brent. He finally looked up. Set his fork down. Why are my belongings in the garage? Kira opened her mouth. Brent held up a hand at her like he was the one who got to handle this. Like she was his to manage. We were going to talk to you about it tomorrow, he said. But since you're here, My dad's lease ended last week. He's going to be staying with us for a while. He needs a real bedroom. Yours is the biggest. You don't really need all that space. You've got the couch in the den. It pulls out. We put fresh sheets on it. I looked at him. I looked at my daughter. She was staring at her plate. This is my house, I said. Yeah, sure, technically. Brent picked his fork back up, started moving food around. But you've been pretty clear that this is everyone's home, right? Family. We're family. My dad is family too now. And the math just works better this way. The math. You don't live here, I said. You stay here. He laughed. He actually laughed. Then he looked at his father, and his father shrugged and smiled like he was watching a play. Brent turned back to me. Pop, come on, don't be like that. It's just a room. You're not even home half the week. You're at the hardware store or out fishing. He needs a place to live, and you got a whole house. Don't make this weird. Pop. He'd never called me Pop in his life. Not in the 6 years he'd been married to my daughter. Not in the 5 years he and Kira had been living under my roof, supposedly saving up for their own place. Pop. Like we were on a sitcom. I turned to Kira. Did you know about this? She didn't look up. Kira. Did you know? Dad, please. We can talk about it, you knew. She started to cry, not loud, just her shoulders shaking and her fingers gripping the edge of the table. Brent put his hand on her back and shot me a look like I was the one upsetting her. I didn't trust myself to speak again right then. I went to the hall closet, got a blanket and a pillow, and walked out the front door. Slept in the cab of my truck in my own driveway. 63 years old. The temperature dropped to 38 that night sat upright in the driver's seat with the blanket pulled up to my chin, and watched my own porch light click on at 10 and off at midnight when somebody in there decided they were done with the day. I didn't sleep much. I thought about Lorna a lot. I thought about what she would have said. She'd have been quicker to anger than me. She'd have been throwing the bearded man's Carhartt out the front door inside of 5 minutes. But she wasn't here. She hadn't been here for 11 years, and in those 11 years I had let a lot of things slide, because I thought letting things slide was what a father did. What a grandfather did. What a man with a quiet life did to keep the quiet. Around 4 a.m, I made a decision. I'd been making it for a while, maybe years, and the bearded man at my dining room table just helped me sign the paperwork in my head. At 7, I drove to the diner on Route 9 and ate 2 eggs and 4 pieces of bacon and drank coffee until the waitress stopped asking. Then I drove to the law office of a man named Harlan Steiger, who'd been my attorney for 18 years, ever since he helped me settle Lorna's estate. His secretary said he was booked. I told her to tell him it was me and that it was urgent. He saw me at 8:30. I sat across from him in his office and told him the whole thing, start to finish, in about 12 minutes. He listened without interrupting. He's a quiet man, Harlan. Glasses on a chain around his neck. White hair that needs a trim. The kind of lawyer who waits until you're completely done before he says a word. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and folded his hands. Whose name is on the deed? Mine. Just mine. Lorna and I had it as joint tenants, and it transferred to me when she passed. They've never been on a lease. They never paid rent. No. Any utilities in their name. They paid me cash for what they called their share. $200 a month. Sometimes. Harlan nodded slowly. Have they been there more than 30 days? 5 years. Then, in this state, they're tenants at will. We can't just change the locks today. We have to serve them with a notice. 30 days to vacate. Fine. You sure you want to do this? I'm sure. Your daughter, too. She had 5 years to be my daughter. Last night she chose to be his wife. She can be his wife somewhere else. Harlan looked at me for a long moment. Then he picked up his pen. I'll have the notice drawn up by noon. You'll need to serve it. I recommend doing it in front of a witness. I'll come with you if you want. I'd appreciate that. And Winton, one more thing. He took his glasses off, let them dangle. Once this starts, it starts. You don't get to half do it. They'll cry. They'll bargain. They'll bring in the cavalry. You ready for that? I'm ready. I drove back to the house. The black sedan was gone, but Kira's minivan was still there. I sat in the truck for a minute, and then I went inside and walked straight to my bedroom. The door was unlocked now. I opened it. My bed was gone. Frame and all. In its place was a queen-sized bed I'd never seen before, covered in a navy blue comforter with a duffel bag on top, and a pair of men's boots on the floor next to it. A coffee mug on the nightstand. Still warm, the bearded man's reading glasses on top of a paperback. Kira appeared in the doorway behind me. She'd been crying again. Or, still. Dad. Daddy. Let me explain. Where's my bed? It's in the garage. Under the tarp. Dad, please, can we just talk? Where is your husband? He's at work. And his father. He went to get groceries. Dad, listen. This wasn't supposed to happen like this. Brent thought we'd have time to set up the den nice for you before you got back. We were going to make it really comfortable. You were going to make it comfortable. Yes. We had a TV picked out. A bigger one than the old one. And I bought new sheets. Dad, please. Royston's been through a hard time. His landlord raised the rent and he can't afford. He's a grown man. He's 60 years old. I'm 63. And I'm sleeping in my truck. She started crying harder. I walked past her down the hall, into the kitchen, opened the refrigerator. There were 4 casseroles in there I didn't recognize. Some kind of meatloaf. A pasta thing. Sticky notes on each one with a man's handwriting. Royston had written his name on his food in my refrigerator. I closed the refrigerator. I went back to the front door. I stopped with my hand on the knob and turned to her. Did your mother raise you to do this? That broke her. She slid down the wall and sat on the floor and put her face in her hands. I left her like that. I'm not proud of it, but I left her like that. Harlan met me at the house at noon with a process server, a small man named Beaumont, who carried himself like a sheriff. We waited in the driveway until Brent got home from work at 12:30. Royston pulled up behind him with grocery bags. I stood on the porch with Harlan and Beaumont next to me, and when both men got close enough to see who was waiting, they stopped walking. What's this? Brent said. Beaumont stepped forward. Are you Brent Hallidell? Yeah. He handed him an envelope. You've been served. This is a notice to quit. You have 30 days from today to vacate the premises located at this address. Failure to do so will result in an unlawful detainer action being filed against you. Brent looked at the envelope. He looked at me. His face did something I'd seen 1,000 times on the football field when I used to coach junior high. The look of a kid who knows the play has fallen apart and his only option is to swing harder. Are you serious right now? I am. You're kicking us out. You're kicking your own daughter out. My daughter has 30 days to decide if she wants to be my daughter or your wife. The two of you can figure out where you're going. Where the hell are we supposed to go? I looked at Royston. Royston was standing there with his grocery bags. He didn't say a word. He looked at his son. Then he looked at me. Then he looked down at the concrete. Your father has a son in Bozeman, doesn't he, Bren? Older brother. Owns a body shop. 2-story house. Wife and kids. Brent's jaw tightened. He didn't answer. Funny how it never occurred to anybody that your dad could go stay with his actual son. In his actual son's house. Funny how it had to be my bedroom. In my house with my furniture in the garage, while I was burying my brother. He's your son-in-law's dad, Royston finally said. His voice was softer than it had been at the dining room table the night before. We're family. Right. You're a man I met yesterday, standing in my dining room, eating my food, in my chair. He didn't have a response for that. Brent started in again, louder now, working himself up. He told me I was a selfish old man. He told me Lorna would be ashamed of me. He told me Kira was going to have a breakdown and it would be on my head. He told me I'd die alone and bitter and nobody would come to my funeral. Harlan stood next to me and didn't move. Beaumont stood on the other side and didn't move. I let Brent talk himself out, the way you let a thunderstorm pass, and when he was done, I said one thing. 30 days. Start packing. Then I walked into my house, and Harlan and Beaumont walked in behind me, and I closed the door, and I went to the kitchen, and I made myself a sandwich. That night, I slept on the couch in the den. Kira had made it up, just like she said she would. Fresh sheets and a folded quilt and a glass of water on the side table. I didn't look at any of it. I just laid down in my clothes and stared at the ceiling. Brent and Royston were in my bedroom. Kira was in the guest room. The house was completely silent. 5 people, 4 of us in this house, and not one sound. The next morning I made coffee at 5:30, like I always do. Kira came out at 6 in a robe. She poured herself a cup. She sat at the kitchen table across from me. We didn't speak for a long time. Then she said, "Dad, where do you want me to go?" I looked at her. My daughter, 34 years old. Lorna's eyes. Lorna's chin. I had walked her to kindergarten holding that little hand. I had taught her how to drive in the parking lot of the old Hand. I had taught her how to drive in the parking lot of the old Kmart. I had paid for her wedding to a man I didn't trust because she said she loved him, and I believed her. I want you to figure out who you are when you're not standing behind your husband. He's my husband. He's a freeloader, and his father is a freeloader, and his father is a freeloader. And you've been a freeloader for 5 years, and I let you do it because I love you. But love and a key to my house are not the same thing, Kira. They're not. She nodded slowly. She wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her robe. Where did all the money go? I said. What money? 5 years, 2 incomes. You and Brent both work. You don't pay rent. You don't pay the mortgage. You don't pay property taxes. You eat the groceries I buy half the time. Where did the money go? She didn't answer right away. She traced the rim of her coffee cup with her thumb. We took some trips. Where? Cabo. Twice. And we went to Iceland last summer. And Brent bought a boat. It's at the storage lot off the highway. And we leased the Audi. And his credit cards. He has a lot of credit cards, Dad. I didn't know how many until last year. I sat there. The coffee maker clicked off behind me. And the savings account, I said. The one for your house. The down payment. She was quiet. Kira, there isn't one. There never really was. We told you there was. I put my coffee cup down. I had to put it down because my hand was starting to shake and I didn't want her to see it. 5 years. 5 years of telling myself my daughter was working hard to build a life. 5 years of telling myself the inconvenience was worth it because she was saving for a future. 5 years of cooking extra portions and buying the kind of cereal Brent liked, and replacing the hot water heater because it couldn't handle 4 people anymore. 5 years of telling myself it was temporary. There was no savings. There was a boat in a storage lot. There were 2 trips to Cabo. There was an Audi. And there was a man with a Carhartt jacket sleeping in my bed. Get out of my kitchen, I said. Please, I need a minute. She got up. She set her cup in the sink. At the doorway, she stopped. Dad, I'm sorry. I know. I mean it. I know you do. I still need a minute. She went back down the hall. I sat there until the sun came up the rest of the way and the light hit the kitchen window, and I could see the dust on the sill that Lorna would have wiped down twice a week if she were still here. That afternoon, Brent's older brother showed up. His name is Hollis Calder, and I've met him maybe 4 times in my life, all at family events where he stood off to the side and didn't say much. He's a couple of years older than Brent, runs the body shop in Bozeman like I'd guessed, has 3 kids and a wife who teaches 2nd grade. He drove 3 hours to get to my house. He showed up at 3 in the afternoon and asked if he could come in. I let him in. We sat at the kitchen table. He didn't take his coat off. "I just heard," he said, "about all of this. Kira called me an hour ago." "All right. I want to apologize. For my brother. And for my dad. I didn't know any of this was happening. I want you to know I didn't know. I believe you. Dad called me 3 weeks ago and said he was moving in with Brent. I told him Brent didn't have a house. He said yes, he did. He said Brent and Kira had a big house. A beautiful house. I asked whose house it was, and he told me it was Brent's house. He told me that. I nodded. My father is 60 years old, and he's been a drifter his whole damn life. After my mother died, he doesn't take responsibility for anything. He's never had a lease in his own name. He moves in with girlfriends. He moved in with me for 8 months in 2019, and my wife almost left me over it. We told him then, no more. He had to figure his own life out. He had to grow up. And instead, he found a softer mark. He found my brother. And he found you. He didn't find me. Your brother found me. Your father just sat down at the table. Hollis took a long breath, looked at his hands. My parents would be ashamed of him. Of both of them. I want you to know that. I want you to know that not everybody in our family thinks what they did to you is okay. Your father's been here less than a month, Hollis. Your brother's been here 5 years. He looked up at me. And I'm not blaming you for it. But I am asking you, where the hell have you been? You've been 3 hours up the road this whole time. You knew your brother didn't have his own place. You knew he was crashing in his wife's father's house. You never picked up a phone. I didn't know it was like that. I thought they were saving up. That's what everyone thought. That's what they wanted everyone to think. He didn't have anything to say to that. He sat there a while longer. Then he said he'd take his dad with him to Bozeman tonight. He packed a bag on the way over in his truck. His wife wasn't happy about it, but it was going to be temporary, and his dad was going to get a job at the body shop, and he was going to start paying rent, and if he didn't, he was going to be sleeping in a shelter because Hollis was done. He said all of this quietly. He meant every word. I shook his hand at the door. I told him I appreciated him coming. I told him it didn't change what had to happen with Brent and Kira, but I appreciated him coming. He said he understood. He said for what it was worth, he thought I was doing the right thing. He said Brent had been a coddled kid and a coddled man, and the only thing that was going to wake him up was losing the bed somebody else had made for him. Royston left with Hollis that night. He didn't say goodbye to me. He didn't say much to Brent either. He carried his duffel bag out to his older son's truck and got in the passenger seat, and that was that. I watched from the kitchen window. Brent stood on the porch with his arms crossed and didn't move until the taillights disappeared around the corner. He came inside. He looked at me sitting at the kitchen table. "You happy?" "No." "Then call it off." "I'm not happy, Brent. But I'm not going to call it off either. Those are two different things." He went down the hall. He slammed the bedroom door, the bedroom that, by my count, he had 28 days left to vacate. The next 3 weeks were the strangest of my life. We lived in the house together, the three of us, like ghosts haunting each other. Brent didn't speak to me. Kira spoke to me only about logistics, which casserole dish was whose, who was using the washer when. She'd been looking at apartments. She showed me one on her phone, a 2-bedroom in a complex across town, and asked what I thought. I told her I thought it looked fine. I told her I wasn't going to give her any more financial help with first and last and deposit. She said she understood. She said she wasn't asking. Brent was a different story. About 2 weeks in, he started leaving things around the house in places he knew I'd find them. A printout of an article about elder abuse left on the kitchen counter. A note from someone he claimed was a lawyer saying I couldn't legally evict my own daughter. I showed it to Harlan. It was a fake. Brent had written it himself on his work computer. He threw a coffee mug at the wall one night and broke a hole in the drywall and then claimed Kira had done it. I started keeping a notebook. Everything he did, I wrote down. date, and time. Harlan had told me to. He said if Brent tried to drag it out in court, we'd want a paper trail. I wrote down the article. I wrote down the fake lawyer letter. I wrote down the hole in the wall. I wrote down the morning Brent poured the last of the coffee down the sink while looking me in the eye and grinning. On day 23, he came at me, just with words. He cornered me in the kitchen and started in, voice rising, calling me names I won't repeat here, telling me I was the reason my wife died, telling me Lorna would have walked out on me years ago if cancer hadn't taken her first. I just stood there. I didn't say a word. I let him pour himself out. When he was done, he was breathing hard, and his fists were clenched, and there was a moment where I thought he might actually swing at me. He didn't. He turned around and walked out the front door and got in his car and drove off. I went to the bathroom and locked the door and sat on the edge of the tub and shook for about 10 minutes. Kira had heard the whole thing from the hallway. When I came out, she was sitting on the floor with her back against the wall. "Daddy, don't. I didn't know he could be like that." "You did. Don't tell me you didn't." She started crying again. I sat down on the floor next to her. My knees aren't what they used to be, and it took me a minute. We sat there on the hallway carpet. An old man and his daughter. And I put my arm around her shoulders, and she leaned into me and cried like she was 8 years old. "I'm going to leave him," she said. "That's your decision." "I am. I'm not going to that apartment with him. I'm going to my friend Marsette's house. She has a basement. She said I can stay there until I figure things out." "Okay. I don't want to be married to him anymore. Dad. I haven't wanted to be married to him for a long time." "Then don't be. Will you help me? Not with money. Just, will you help me?" I held my daughter on the hallway floor of the house where she grew up. "Yes," I said. "I'll help you." She moved out on day 26. Just her things. She left in 2 trips, and the second trip she hugged me at the door and didn't say anything. Just held on for a long time. Brent watched from the living room. He didn't try to stop her. I don't think he believed she was actually doing it until she was gone. He left on day 30. Bare minimum. Stripped the bed he'd brought in, took the duffel bag, took the bed frame, didn't take the dresser because there was no room in his car. Left a hole in the wall and 3 empty pizza boxes in the den, and a smell in the bathroom I had to scrub for 2 hours to get out. He didn't say goodbye. He just slammed the door and was gone. I stood in the middle of my living room. The house was very quiet. The kind of quiet that has weight to it. I went to the garage. I dragged my dresser back inside, 1 drawer at a time so I could manage the weight. I hung my shirts back in the closet. I set my reading lamp on the nightstand. I put my wedding picture, the one with the cracked glass, on top of the dresser where it had always been. I'd get the glass replaced eventually. For now, I left it the way it was. I made my bed. Just one side. I'd been making a bed for one for 11 years. Then I sat on the edge of it and I cried for the first time in I don't know how long. Not for Brent. Not even for my daughter. For my brother, who I'd buried 31 days ago and hadn't had a single minute to grieve. For my wife, who would have handled all of this in half the time it took me. For the version of myself who had let it go this far in the first place. Who'd thought being a good father meant never saying no. Who'd given a coddled boy a key to my house and then was surprised when he behaved like he owned the place. I cried for about 20 minutes. Then I got up. I washed my face. I went to the kitchen. I made dinner for one. Pork chop, baked potato, the green beans Lorna used to make on Sundays. I sat at the table in my chair, at the head, and I ate. That was 11 months ago now. Kira and I are doing all right. She's in counseling. Has been since about 2 months after she moved out. She got her own apartment in February. Smaller than the one she was looking at with Brent, and on the other side of town, but it's hers. She pays her own rent. She comes for dinner on Sundays. We don't talk about him much. She mentions him when she needs to. The divorce went through in August. He didn't fight it as hard as I thought he would. I think part of him was relieved. I heard through the grapevine that Brent is back living with his dad. Royston didn't last in Bozeman, of course. Hollis kicked him out after 4 months when he wouldn't take the body shop job seriously and wouldn't pay rent. Last I heard, the two of them, father and son, are renting a 1-bedroom apartment together over a laundromat outside of town. Brent works at a tire place. The Audi got repossessed. The boat got sold. I don't take any pleasure in it. I really don't. But I don't lose sleep over it either. I don't know if Kira will ever be the same as she was before all this. I don't know if I will. There are days I look at the empty chairs at my dining room table, and I miss the noise, even the noise that was costing me everything. I'm 63. I might be more alone than I ever wanted to be. But this is my house. The dust on the windowsill is mine to wipe. The chair at the head of the table is mine to sit in. My wife's picture is on my dresser, and when I die, that picture goes into the ground with me. And not one piece of furniture in this house is going to be shoved into a garage by somebody who decided his comfort mattered more than my whole life. Kira asked me last Sunday if I had any regrets about how I handled it. About the eviction. I told her my only regret was that I waited 5 years to do it. I told her if I had it to do over, I'd have served them the notice the day they unpacked the first box. She nodded. She got it. I think she finally gets it. Family is something you build. It's not a free pass. Some people in your family will hold the door open for you, your whole life, and some will walk through it and never look back at who's holding it. The trick is knowing which is which, and being willing to lock the door behind the second kind, even when they're your own blood. Especially when they're your own blood. I made coffee this morning. The sun came up over the foothills. The house was quiet, the way I like it now. I sat at the table in my chair and I drank my coffee and I thought about my brother and I thought about Lorna and I thought about my daughter and I thought about the man I used to be before all this who wouldn't have had the spine to do what I did. I'm not that man anymore. I don't know exactly who I am instead, but I know where I sleep and I know whose name is on the deed. And at 63 years old, that turns out to be more than enough. I think about that first night a lot. The one I spent in the cab of my truck in my own driveway, 63 years old, with a blanket pulled up to my chin while my son-in-law slept in my bed. I've thought about it 100 times since, and every time I come back to the same understanding, none of what happened to me that night came out of nowhere. I built that night, brick by brick, over 5 years of telling myself that love meant never saying the hard word. The hard word being no. When I let Brent and my daughter Kira move in for a little while, I thought I was being a good father. I wasn't. I was being a comfortable one. There's a difference, and it took me almost losing my home to learn it. Every casserole I cooked for 4 instead of 1, every cash payment of $200 I pretended was rent. Every time I noticed the Audi in my driveway, didn't ask how they could afford it on the salaries they claimed they had. Every silence I chose over a real conversation. I was teaching Brent that I could be moved, that my house could be his, that the man at the head of my own table could one day be his father. You don't get sat down at by a stranger like Royston unless somebody first let your chair get loose. I let the chair get loose. That's the truth of it, and I make no excuses for it now. Royston didn't break into my house. He walked in through a door I'd left propped open for half a decade. What I learned, and what I want anybody who hears my story to understand, is that being a decent person isn't the same as being an endless one. There's a kind of strength that has nothing to do with anger, and everything to do with knowing what's yours, and being willing to stand on it. I didn't yell at Brent that first night. I didn't throw anything. I went to a lawyer. I made a plan. I served the papers. I did it cold, and I did it correctly. And that turned out to matter more than any amount of shouting would have. The clearest mind always wins the longer game. And Kira, my daughter. I love her now, the same way I loved her the day she was born. But love isn't a key to a house, and it isn't a free pass for a husband who steals 5 years of your life. She had to lose me a little before she could find herself. That's the cause, and that's the effect, and there was no shortcut around it. I'm not the man I was a year ago. I'm slower to give and quicker to ask why. I'm less worried about being liked and more worried about being honest. I sleep in my own bed every night, and the dust on the windowsill is mine to wipe, and that's enough. If somebody is testing the lock on your life right now, don't wait. Change it today.